Welcome to the channel O Verso Sagrado. As we know, Abraham was the ancestor of several peoples, such as the Israelites, Ishmaelites, and Midianites, all descended from him through his wives. An interesting point, which is not always explored in detail, is the story of the three women who were part of Abraham's life. Who were they? Where did they come from? And what was the significance of each in the biblical accounts? These questions will be answered in this video, where we will discuss Abraham's wives Sarah, Hagar, and Keturah. Abraham's story begins in Ur of the Chaldeans, where he lived with his father Terah and his brothers Haran and Nahor. When Haran died young, Terah decided to travel to Canaan, but ended up settling temporarily in the city of Haran. Later, God called Abraham and commanded him to leave his family and go to an unknown land, Canaan. This moment marked the beginning of a new phase in his life, making him one of the most important figures in biblical history. The book of Genesis records this entire journey, highlighting his lineage and role as a patriarch. Abraham was a descendant of Arphaxad from the line of Shem, placing him among the Semitic peoples. He was born in Ur of the Chaldeans, and his father Terah was also part of this lineage. His story is not just about a change of location, but also a spiritual and historical transformation. By obeying God's call, Abraham became an example of faith and obedience, and his choices had a significant impact on future generations. God promised Abraham that he would have many descendants, as numerous as the stars in the sky, and this promise was essential for the formation of the people of Israel. His journey also shows the importance of trusting in God, even in the face of doubts and difficulties. When he left Haran and went to Canaan with only God's word as his guide, he demonstrated courage by abandoning his security to follow a greater calling. This faithfulness not only defined his trajectory, but also solidified the covenant between God and mankind. The ancient Semitic culture, of which Abraham was a part, is often misunderstood. Some people say he spoke Hebrew or Phoenician, but this is incorrect. As he was born in Ur of the Chaldeans, he spoke Akkadian. Later, when he moved to Haran, he began speaking Aramaic, a language he already knew. Abraham's primary wife, Sarah, was his most beloved companion. The name Sarah has a special meaning in languages like Akkadian, Babylonian, and Assyrian. It means queen. The Bible shows the great love between her and Abraham, as well as details about her origin. Sarah was his half-sister, the daughter of Terah by another Semitic woman from Ur of the Chaldeans. Something interesting about Sarah is that even at an advanced age, between 80 and 90 years old, she was still admired for her beauty. Biblical accounts tell us that her appearance was so striking that it caught the attention of princes and even the Pharaoh of Egypt. These men, who had harems with many women, were impressed by Sarah's beauty, showing how special she was. Additionally, the Bible recounts that at the age of 90, Sarah had a son, Isaac. The name Isaac means laughter or joy, symbolizing the happiness his birth brought, as it was a great miracle for a woman of her age. Isaac became the second patriarch and one of the ancestors of the people of Israel. Sarah's story also connects with that of Hagar, Abraham's concubine, who played an important role in the biblical narrative. Hagar was Egyptian, a descendant of Mizraim, and the mother of Ishmael, Abraham's first son. The conflict between Sarah and Hagar is one of the most striking in the Bible. This situation is linked to the customs of the time, such as the laws of Nutsi, which regulated family relations among the Semitic peoples. According to these laws, if a wife could not have children, she could give her servant to her husband. The child born would be considered the heir of the official wife. Thus, Ishmael, Hagar's son, was seen as Sarah's son, according to the rules of that society. These traditions also dictated that the concubine should be treated with respect, and in some cases could become a secondary wife. This is what happened with Hagar, who, after giving birth to Ishmael, gained more status in Abraham's household. However, when she tried to place herself above Sarah, conflicts arose that intensified over time. Although we do not know much about Hagar's history before meeting Abraham, the Bible tells us that she was Egyptian. Her name appears in ancient records, such as archaeological tablets from Ebla, which reinforces her historical importance. Names like Sarah, Abraham, Adam, and Eve also appear in these records, showing the influence of these figures. The choice of Hagar as Abraham's concubine followed the customs of the time, where family continuity was fundamental. Semitic laws were well defined regarding the rights and duties of each person in the family, but they also allowed for complex situations. The conflict between Sarah and Hagar shows how these traditions influenced human relationships. Even though she was Egyptian and grew up in a polytheistic culture, Hagar came to know the God of Abraham. Her time with Sarah and Abraham changed her faith, and she abandoned the Egyptian gods to believe in the true God. This process was so significant that the Bible records that she had contact with angels sent by God who brought important promises. The angels told Hagar that her descendants would be numerous and that from her would come 12 princes, forming the Ishmaelite tribes. This shows that even as a foreigner, Hagar was included in God's plan. Her story reveals that the Creator has purposes for everyone, regardless of their origin or situation. Hagar not only became the mother of Ishmael, but also a living witness to God's mercy and care in times of distress, such as when she was expelled by Sarah and wandered in the desert with her son. She cried out to the Lord and was answered. God provided water and sustenance, reaffirming his promise of protection and prosperity for her and her son. These events not only highlight divine intervention, but also underscore the personal relationship Hagar developed with God. Her conversion is an example of how faith in the true God transcends cultural and religious barriers. Her story symbolizes the inclusion of peoples beyond Israel in God's divine plans, pointing to the vastness of his love and purpose for all humanity. Hagar, an Egyptian, became part of a greater sacred narrative, contributing to the fulfillment of prophecies and the formation of a lineage that would leave a lasting impact on the history of the Middle East. After Hagar's departure with Ishmael, Abraham found himself alone again, as Sarah had also passed away. In this context, with Isaac about to marry, Abraham, now a widower and lonely, decided to take a new wife. This woman, initially his concubine, as had been the case with Hagar, was a culturally acceptable practice for Abraham, a Semitic man who could have more than one wife. We know that Hagar had already left, and Abraham chose another concubine to be his wife Keturah. Keturah's name stands out in the story because she went from being a concubine to a wife. After Sarah's death, Abraham formalized his marriage to Keturah, making her his second wife. Some scholars debate Keturah's origin, and some even mistakenly say that she was Hagar herself, but this idea has no basis in the Bible, as the scriptures make it clear that they were two different women. Regarding her origin, Keturah's name itself may provide clues. It means bound, committed, or destined for marriage in Aramaic. An interesting fact is that excavations in the city of Ebla have uncovered ancient tablets with the name Keturah, suggesting that she came from ancient Syria, which at that time was called Aram. This reinforces that Keturah was an important person and entirely different from Hagar. Thus, we can say that Keturah was an Aramean woman, like Rebekah, Isaac's wife, who also came from the land of Aram. Some believe that Keturah could have been a servant of Rebekah and came with her when she married Isaac. This idea makes sense, as there was little time between Isaac's marriage to Rebekah and Abraham's union with Keturah. According to the book of Genesis, Abraham had 6 sons with Keturah. Genesis 25:12 recounts that Abraham married Keturah and had 6 sons: Zimran, Yokshan, Medan, Midian, Ishbak, and Shua. They were the sons of Abraham and Keturah. Thank you to everyone who watched the video up to this point. To summarize, the women Abraham married were first Sarah, then his concubine Hagar, and finally his second wife, Keturah. May God bless you all, and see you next time.